Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congressman Tim Burchett. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Brittany.
We're talking under similar circumstances than when the last time you joined me, which was about 48 hours from the first assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump. Right. Now we sit here, the former president survived yet another assassination attempt. What's your reaction to the news?
Again, what in the world? Secret Service. I mean, we had one brave agent that obviously stopped it with his shots, but the truth is if he had been a sniper, he would have cut a hole in that fence and not stuck his barrel out, and we might be having a different discussion today. How was that guy how was he able to stay in there for 12 hours? Why, how did he know he was there? There's just a lot of questions that need to be asked. And of course, Secret Service director and these bureaucrats up here, it's always more money. We need more money. Well, they've got a $3 billion budget, something like 6,000 employees. They need to get back to their original, they originally were just for policing counterfeit money. And then they advanced. They need to take the counterfeit and put that back over, put it over into Treasury, I think, and then just use Secret Service for protection. And there's a lot of talk out there. We bring in Navy SEALs, all these other people. They don't have the jurisdiction. They can't stop traffic. They can't make arrests. There's all kinds of problems there. We've got a structure. Let's work within it. Let's cut out all the DEI hires. Let's make sure that's not in leadership or any of those positions that could cause, that could get somebody killed.
Forbes broke down the numbers of Secret Service funding, and I want to get your take on those in just a little bit. But first, you brought up some important questions. What are the questions that need to be answered? Because the biggest one is, how the heck did this happen again in 2 months since the first assassination attempt? And are you close to getting any of those answers?
No, heck no. This town don't give up anything. All they do is protect. They're just looking for, just like Congress, they're just trying to get through the next 2 years so they can get reelected. That's all anybody cares about. They don't care about our country. They sure as hell don't care about Donald Trump. And that's a disgrace. It really is. Both parties ought to be demanding answers, and we ought to be firing. There ought to be heads on the chopping block right now and cleaning this rat's nest up. But you won't. There's too much bureaucracy. I got too many, these old timers, both parties. I got a friend over there telling me this, got a friend over there, and they're just going to protect their buddies, and it's going to cost somebody their life.
You said a similar sentiment in our last conversation in July, and you said that the Secret Service needs to clean house after this. Do you feel the same way today?
I do. Why was there not drones in the air? I was at a football game this past weekend. It was West High School in Maryville, and they had two or three drones in the air. I watched it on the guy's screen. I mean, you could clearly see what was going on. This is a dadgum high school football game in East Tennessee, for goodness sakes. Why in the world do they not have that? Why don't they have the stuff that they could spot a heat signature in the bushes? All those things. And then you got Mayorkas out there lying today, saying that Trump has pretty much the same coverage as the president. Well, you know what? When the president of the United States walks off the floor of the Capitol up here, there's a helicopter in the air, and there's other stuff. There's people on buildings. They're not affording Trump the same coverage, and that's just a lie. They're going to get him killed.
The Secret Service's acting director, Ronald Rowe, also said a similar sentiment. He said that Donald Trump is receiving the highest levels of protections from the Secret Service. Do you think that's true? A, you're kind of saying right now you don't really believe that, but B, do you think that's enough?
Well, if that's the truth, they're inept. I just don't believe it. I believe you've got some real patriots that work in these departments, but you've got real bureaucrats that have kissed somebody's butt to get to where they are and are not qualified. And I think that's what they bring before Congress and think that they can buffalo us. And they do a pretty good job of it, really. I worry about our own members being compromised because they don't turn up the heat on this. This is pathetic. Either party ought to be on the floor of the House right now. The people that can stop this nonsense ought to be up there, but they're not. And you got to ask yourself why.
Who are these bureaucrats that you're saying specifically?
Well, the directors of these departments. You're seeing, the last one, she quit in disgrace, couldn't answer a question or wouldn't answer. I suspect it's a combination of both. She was probably afraid of getting sued or some other retribution brought down on her. And then you bring this guy in, and he's at a press conference, and he says it's not a situation of resources, but then he talks about needing more resources. So it's the classic Washington bureaucracy. You hear what you want to hear, and it's never going to change until you change the bureaucracy. We've talked to whistleblowers off the record, and they tell just what a rat's nest it is, and the way to get to the top is not by achieving. It's a different process, and it's unfortunate. That's I always say, put the best player in, coach. I don't care if it's a man or a woman. But again, I go back to the first shooting attempt of they grazed the President Trump. People couldn't put their guns in their holsters, and instead of being on top of the pile to block the president, they were hiding behind the pile. And that's not their job. Their job is to take a bullet for the president, and that's their job. If you don't want to do it, it's not a draft. They volunteer to get there, and there used to be a process to get there, and that process, I think, has been damaged. So I think we need to get back to just putting the best players in.
You questioned Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle about the first assassination attempt, and during a House Oversight Committee hearing, she eventually resigned. Is the House Oversight Committee going to have another hearing about this assassination attempt?
I assume we will, and everybody will get their one-liners in. But the reality is you got a bunch of folks up there about the size of Kenny Chesney guarding the president the first go-around. They should have been the size of Trace Adkins. If you know anything, you can Google that if you don't know country music. But and I'm not making fun of Kenny, I know him, but it's just his height. It was just wrong. It was just wrong. That was complete. And we really don't know if those were Secret Service or were they Homeland Security. Again, you have the head of Homeland Security, just not telling the truth, and I'm sick of that. And they know they think they can run the clock out because they think they've got enough out there, enough lies out there. That Trump won't win, and they'll be safe. They'll be safe for 4 more years, and that's the game. Just protecting their own butts and their own payroll, and not worrying about the country. And that's the mentality of Washington. Both parties.
There clearly needs to be a solution here because this has been now 2 times in 2 months. The acting director of the Secret Service, Rowe, said that the Secret Service needs additional funding to hire more personnel, to enhance training, and to go from a reactive model to a readiness model. So you don't think more funding is the answer. So what do you think the answer is instead?
I think it's training, and I think it's leadership. You've got people like Dan Bongino out there talking about it publicly, who's a former Secret Service agent, been on a presidential detail, making clear and valid points. And there is no answer to that because we're going to play the politics game. We're going to make sure the Democrats get their questions, the Republicans get their questions, and we're just running the clock out. Look, I'm guilty of this as anybody, but Americans want their pizzas in 30 minutes or less, and that's about our attention span. They know, the first assassination attempt that actually grazed Trump, not even mentioned in the media anymore, hardly, in the so-called traditional media. And this one is they're already blaming Trump and J.D. Vance. And, they're blaming them for their own assassination attempt. It's beyond belief. And you got Hillary Clinton out there spouting all kinds of garbage, saying, turn the heat up. And that heat is what's almost got Trump killed twice. And then they'll point to something Trump said or something some conservative said. But guess what? It's not the conservatives out there shooting up schools or trying to take Donald J. Trump out. It's the liberal far left, and the media ought to admit to that. They show the picture of this guy's truck and his yard, and they said there's no clear political affiliation this guy, and he had a Kamala Harris's bumper sticker on his dadgum truck. So if he'd had a Trump sticker, you can guarantee that'd have been front and center. So the unbelievable bias, the vitriol, you combine that with a nut out there, and you're going to have and we're going to have a lot more problems. I mean, I see it in my own life, in my own security, the areas where I have to be careful.
Well, do you feel safe then, especially in this political climate where the heat, the temperature is up? Do you feel safe?
Hell no, I don't. No. It's not going to talk about too much of it, but no, I don't.
What do you think needs to be done then to keep not only presidential candidates safe, past presidents, potential future presidents, but also lawmakers in general and safe? Because it is alarming to hear a member of Congress say point blank, "I do not feel safe."
I think it's got to be, it lays at the foot of the national media. If they're going to allow these people an avenue, you saw it in the debate. I mean, ABC. Just the bias. Yeah, Trump didn't do as good as I wanted him to do, but they kept correcting him, and they never. I mean, just on something simple about Kamala Harris saying we've got no troops in combat zones. We got troops right now in combat zones, and that would have been an easy correction, but they chose not to. And the bias in the media is so apparent. I don't want that bunch for us. I mean, if I turned on The View one day and they were praising Tim Burchett, ma'am, I would seriously reconsider my point of view.
Well, I want to get back to the Secret Service funding because you don't think that's the answer. Forbes actually has reporting from July that I would love to share with you. We wrote this. The Secret Service, quote, was allocated over $3 billion in taxpayer dollars in 2024, up from $2.78 billion last year for its operations. That's almost certainly the most the Secret Service has ever had at its disposal, adjusted for estimated inflation. That $3 billion is still about $100 million higher than the 2023 budget and the highest since at least 2014. So if you don't think that they need more funding, do you have questions about where this money is going?
I do. How many bureaucrats does it take to funnel? It's like the Department of Education. Shut it down, send the money to the states. They've got too many bureaucrats. And again, they're all protected under some government union or something, I'm sure. Three-quarters of the paper shufflers are. But their job should be protecting dignitaries, protecting members of state. How many do they have now? I dare say it's probably below 30. And then you divide $3 billion up in that amount. It doesn't take long to figure out you got a bunch of paper shufflers over there. Get out of it. Get them in there. Get somebody in there like a Dan Bongino or somebody that's actually got some guts, that understands the program and is not afraid to step up. And let's see what happens. You've got the lady who was in charge, who was obviously didn't have a clue about what was going on. The guy comes in under her, that under the same program, and he's going to do something different. No, he's not. He's just going to cover his butt. He understands the program. That's his dream, probably, to be the head of the Secret Service. So he's in that spot. So he's going to say whatever it takes to get him through this election cycle so he can stay in power. That's all it's about. It's not about doing what's right. It's human nature. Let's cut through that. And I'm tired of it. Let's take the top couple of layers out. Let's bring in the men and women who actually do the job and ask them what they need. Not some bureaucrat at the top that's schmoozed his way through the cycle, that's friends with the president or friends with the president's wife or whatever they've done, which they've done in the past. We know that. And let's see what we need. But until then, I'm not for voting for any more money for them.
So then no more money from Congressman Tim Burchett, but what are you going to do to ensure this doesn't happen again?
Well, first of all, they need to get out of the counterfeit police business. That should be over at Treasury. A lot of people don't realize that's a large portion of what they do is counterfeit enforcement. I think that's the first thing. And then that would free up additional funds, resources, and people. And if they're an accountant that looks at serial numbers on $100 bills, they need to get over to Treasury, or maybe they need to find a new job. I think that's first, and then we'll free up the additional funds there. What Congress needs to do is get some guts. We do these hearings and we drag them out and drag them out and drag them out, and then elections coming in November, we'll forget about it in a couple of weeks, unless there's another shooting. But I'm afraid we're not going to get lucky these next times. I think they're if somebody's out there that's a professional, they realize the stupid mistakes these last two have made, and we could have a real tragedy on our hands.
Well, Congressman, I appreciate our conversations per usual. I hope next time we can speak under some lighter circumstances, but I appreciate you coming on today. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's always a pleasure, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me.